unsustainable welfare state and a willingness to sacrifice privacy and civil liberties in an attempt to achieve safety and security from an inept government. Dangerous times indeed. What can be done about it? Must we wait for the inevitable and expect to restore our liberties in a street fight against the overwhelming power of the state? Not a good option. The only way that we can prevent blood from running in the streets is to offer a better idea of the proper role of government in a society that desires first and foremost liberty. And that is impossible without a firm commitment by our thought leaders to the ideas of freedom, the source of all creative energy and prosperity. An all-powerful state is the threat to that.
The all-powerful state is the threat. That's what America's built on. And Max Keiser, 3.5 years ago in the Obama deception, broke down exactly what would happen economically, and we've now seen it unfold. He'll be with us throughout the next hour. He joins us from the continent of Europe right now, normally of France. He's in Amsterdam right now. And, of course, Max Keiser is a filmmaker, broadcaster, former broker, and options trader. He is known for his invention of virtual specialist technology, a software system used by the Hollywood Stock Exchange, and a lot of the new systems are based on that, and for his accurate predictions of global economic events. He correctly predicted the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac breakdown and what happened in the Iceland's economy, and it just goes on and on. He's labeled J.P. Morgan the biggest financial terrorist on Wall Street. And he's got some breaking news on them, but we'll get to that when we start the next hour. We're going to break here in a few minutes, Max. You heard what Ron Paul was just talking about. It's now confirmed they're gearing up the military for every U.S. city and telling banks get ready for collapse, but telling the public everything is just fine. Max Keiser, what is the real state of the world economy right now?
Hey, Alex, great to be on. Well, last time I was on your show, remember you asked me to make a prediction when this global collapse is coming. I said on the outside, maybe 9 months. But even in those short few days since I spoke with you last, it seems like the drum beats are beating louder toward this idea of a global financial collapse. And the banking regulators are asking all the big banks around the world to come back to them with a worst case scenario. What do you have on your books, and how would you go through a collapse? And interesting, J.P. Morgan, of course, responded. They said that they've got a negative equity of about $30 or $40 billion on their books. So the entire $140 billion market cap would be gone in an Enron-like instant. Of course, they're totally plugged into the Fed and the Treasury, which would collapse the Fed and the Treasury and the U.S. dollar. So when Ron Paul talks about the collapse of the U.S. dollar, what you fill in here for those who are following this at home and want to get the whole playbook, first we see the collapse of J.P. Morgan, then the collapse of the Treasury and the Fed, then the collapse of the dollar, brought about by J.P. Morgan's books, which have $90 trillion worth of what they call derivatives, basically claims that are impossible to ever fulfill. That's bigger than the entire gross domestic product of the entire planet Earth. $90 trillion, just one bank.
All right, now stay there, Max, because again, you're retired at a young age, former stockbroker, inventor of a lot of the modern systems they use today. But come back in layman's terms, even for our business listeners, break down the point we're reaching right now and why they've got armored vehicles being loaded off trains in every major city right now for the American people and the people of Europe. Why are they gearing up for total collapse? Can it be averted? Stay with us. Yeah, I've been watching the globalists through fraudulent derivatives buy off governments, media, buy up the defense contractors, and brag that they're establishing this authoritarian world government. And I got a better idea. How about the national sovereignty kick in and we arrest all these people? Now, they've got all our pension funds, everything bound to their fraud, but they're planning on taking it all. I mean, a great quote from Max Keiser when he was on a few weeks ago. He said, Alex, they're like cancer, these bankers. They're anti-free market, and they're programmed to take it all. Cancer is programmed to take it all. So in layman's terms, there's been big breaking news in the Financial Times this weekend on Friday about J.P. Morgan and their balance sheet. You, again, said they were short. You said it would start in London with silver about a year ago here. So break down the technicals of that, but in generalities, where the world economy is. Because a few weeks ago you said, because you never really talked like this, you said, no, the collapse is coming. You know, now it's basically can't be reversed. The only question is, will we let them fully take over and only make it worse? Max Keiser.
Yeah, the outside, my prediction was April of next year when taxes are collected in the U.S. and a huge shortfall will become evident, and U.S. AAA rated bonds, which are now AA plus, will be downgraded to single A or less. And that will, at the very outset of this prediction, will trigger a chain reaction of U.S. debt default, collapse, and dollar collapse. But between now and then, any number of events could happen that would trigger the collapse beforehand. And as far as the news that broke last week, that front page story in the Financial Times talking about the CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Corporation, which is the regulator that overlooks commodity futures trading, including silver trading, run by Gary Gensler, a former Goldman Sachs guy. They made a comment, a guy named Bart Chilton, who's one of the people over the CFTC, I know from dealing with him through the box office futures contracts, what his reputation is not good. But they made a statement saying that they see a lot of devious trading in silver. They're not sure whether they're going to prosecute. And the way this was played out in the media was that, oh, well, the Max Keiser crashed JP Morgan, buy silver crashed JP Morgan campaign. You see, the CFTC is saying that there is no evidence of wrongdoing in the silver market. Now, this is the same CFTC and other regulators who oversee the LIBOR market. Of course, a massive $500 trillion scandal.
Yeah, let's just stop right there because I just showed a Fox News with a headline about economic collapse from a few weeks ago. And it breaks down that the federal government's now spending 50% a year more than it takes in. But you're saying by next April, when the taxes come due, the private Federal Reserve, that it's going to become even bigger and that'll be a big trigger. But getting back to LIBOR, yeah, tell folks about that because that's almost gotten swept under the rug that, hey, the bankers do get together and collude to screw us.
No, as Ron Paul would tell you, for every dollar in tax the government collects, they spend $1.40 in money that they have no way of ever paying back. And that ratio is getting completely out of control. As the debt ceiling is breached over and over again. It'll be breached again very soon. But this CFTC report relating to silver, they're trying to spin it as if, well, this idea of buying silver, you don't do that because you're not going to crash JP Morgan in doing so. But it misses some very key points here. First of all, the reason you would want to buy silver to crash JP Morgan is not to satisfy the regulator. That's not who we're doing this for. We're not trying to get the regulator to regulate better because there's no hope of that ever happening. We're saying that the regulator, in this case CFTC, is never going to blow the whistle on JP Morgan's illegal activities or the CFTC. But what we can do is we can buy silver to protect ourselves. And the point I made then and the point I'll make today is that this collapse is coming. And in my opinion, instead of being passive and watching from the sidelines, I believe everybody should try to hasten the collapse by buying physical silver. This would bring the collapse about sooner. But if you are positioned correctly with your physical silver, you'll have the wealth. Your silver will start to trade to $100, $200, $300 an ounce from the current $28 an ounce. The banksters will go bankrupt. And you'll have the money. We'll have the money.
Okay, listen, I want to get more into this technical thing later if we talk about the general issues and take some calls. But if you just joined us, London Guardian reported on your plan to expose the fact that JP Morgan, from your sources, is manipulating silver prices. I mean, that's like asking if a bear goes to the bathroom in the woods or if the sun comes up in the morning. And now it's back in the Financial Times and the Business Insider. And they have the regulators a year later responding, saying, oh, no, don't punch me there. That won't hurt me. I mean, they're crying uncle. They're tapping out. Why would they be squealing now, trying to discredit this idea? Well, we know. Precious metals, but other commodities expose inflation. So the big banks have been in there manipulating. That's not been debated, really, to drive down their prices. But if they go to QE3 in the fall of the winter, it's going to send it racing back up above, even mainline banks. I saw CNBC a few weeks ago saying Morgan Stanley and others are saying $2,000 gold this year. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this whole, oh, please, don't listen to Max Keiser. Having federal regulators, the head regulator respond to you, is that a sign that they're very freaked out right now? Or were they just out of the blue responding to you when they never want to respond to anybody?
No, when silver jumped from 25, where we talked about it last year, to 50, that put a serious dent on JP Morgan's balance sheet. And we saw evidence of that a couple of weeks ago when they came out with this $2 billion, but then it became a $9 billion loss from what is called the London whale in London. That's a direct result of covering their silver shorts. They use their balance sheet in this smorgasbord of fraud where they can just move gains and losses from any division of anywhere in the world.
And by the way, not to toot your horn again, you did call who had really gotten the $2 billion of MF Global, John Corzine money. You said the head of JP Morgan called up and said, I'm going to blow your head off if you don't give me that money. Now, that never came out in the news, but it did come out. The money did go to JP Morgan Chase. Yeah,
that's right. It did go to JP Morgan Chase. I was the first to point that out. And that's exactly right. And they're involved in so many aspects of this global fraud because they're the market maker, they're the clearing firm, they're the bank that stands as the counterparty for the global derivatives business. When I say that JP Morgan has $90 trillion of derivatives on their own books, part and parcel with that is that they're the market maker and counterparty to this global business because they get a fee on every single one of these trades. But the fact is, and what this FDIC demand for these banks to prepare for banking Armageddon is for them to submit what their true state of the balance sheets are. Morgan came in with a negative net worth, negative $34 billion. So they have a market cap of $140 billion. So once the cascade effect starts to cripple this bank irreparably, going the way of Enron, their stock's going to go to zero. They've used their own stock to collateralize naked short sales in the silver futures market.
Sure, well, listen, I want to break this down, but I want to move a little bit slower here because I study this all the time and barely understand it, and I know some of the listeners may have trouble following this. The average radio show goes, what is your favorite color? You know, Bill Clinton, good, George Bush, bad, or Al Gore, bad, Mitt Romney, good. So I mean, I want to be able to go over all this for people, but the point is, you're saying it's getting towards the end of the line. You got a company worth $140 billion, or even, well, I mean, in real numbers, negative $30+ billion, with a derivatives hangover of $90+ trillion, and that's even in the Washington Post. Bank of America, 70-something trillion, Wells Fargo. I mean, these type of numbers, and they think we're so stupid, they're going to have government sign us onto their debt while lecturing us that we don't work hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, think of Hurricane Katrina. The levees broke, and those people found themselves in a very bad situation. That's the derivatives market. The levees that hold it back, all the fraud, are cracking. And the global banking is, even the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, which is the central bank of central banks, they're issuing warnings internally to these central banks at the Fed, ECB, Bank of England, flashing the warning signs like, you guys need to boost your collateral immediately. You are cracking. You are breaking. Alert,
yeah, that's what they're telling them in Reuters. They say, start selling your hard assets now before it plunges. You won't get anything once it starts. We've got to keep the big 6 Federal Reserve banks up.
Well, look at what the UK did. In order to support the derivatives market, Gordon Brown, when he was there at the Exchequer, he sold half of Britain's gold supply to satisfy this global derivatives market. Now, when the crash is coming, the UK is in a horrible position. They have less than 300 tons of gold. It's one of the worst positions in the world. Only the countries with gold are going to survive this thing. And, you know, interestingly, Italy has 2,500 tons of gold. They're in a good position. The U.S. has 8,000 tons of gold, ostensibly. They're actually, if that gold is there, they're in a relatively good position. The Eurozone has 12,000.
Tell you what, we got to go to break, Max. Stay there. Here's the toll-free number to join us. We're going to break it all down in the next hour, 877-789-ALEX. Stay with us. Now, we're going to open the phones up coming up the next segment with Max Keiser. But I want specific questions. You know, we normally just have free-for-all.